Open a premium cafe, fill it with expensive equipment, and the lines out the doors suggest a thriving business. The health of that business relies on a single equation: profit equals revenue minus cost. Take the case of Tata Starbucks in India, for example. By the mid-2020s, the joint venture had expanded from a handful of coastal hubs to roughly 380 stores across the country. This chart tracks Tata Starbucks revenue from 2012 through 2024, showing a steep upward curve, growing 12% in 2024 alone. But the net profit line tells a different story. Net losses tripled, widening to 81 crore in 2024. A common error is guessing the cause, assuming the coffee's too expensive or competitors are stealing share. Professionals instead use a mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive, or MECE issue tree. This diagnostic tool is designed to mathematically isolate the root cause of a failing equation. We will build this framework from scratch and push the Starbucks data through it to locate the exact structural failure. Top-line revenue growth can actively mask severe margin erosion. Rigorous architecture succeeds where intuition often fails. Before opening the framework, we must establish a diagnostic baseline. We need to determine if the profit drop is an external shock or a gradual structural erosion. For Starbucks, the timeline of the widening loss correlates with their aggressive footprint expansion, scaling from their original 14 stores to nearly 400. This correlation suggests a hypothesis. The costs associated with rapid expansion are outrunning the revenue generated by those new markets. This diagram shows our starting MECE tree. We split the primary node, profit, into its two main branches, revenue and cost. We then break the revenue branch down into its core drivers, the price of the product multiplied by the volume of customers. Now we inject the raw case data. Tata Starbucks is reporting double-digit growth in both same-store sales and total revenue. Volume and pricing power remain intact. Since the data contradicts a revenue side failure, we can remove it from our investigation. This forces us to focus strictly on the opposite side of the ledger, the cost branch. A strategist always relies on the math. When revenue grows while the business bleeds money, the crisis is purely a cost-side containment failure. Returning to our flowchart, we split the remaining cost branch into its two sub-branches, variable costs and fixed costs. In a retail context, variable costs scale with each item sold. This includes cost of goods sold, raw material inputs, and hourly labor. Operating a premium, experience-heavy brand like Starbucks in India requires premium imported inputs. This creates structurally higher variable costs per cup. This premium structure stands in contrast to the local, street-level competition, which operates with near-zero overhead and minimal material costs. But we must determine if this high variable cost is a constant drag on margins or a new problem causing the sudden, widening loss. Premium inputs have always been part of the Starbucks model in India. A static, baseline cost does not explain why net losses tripled in a single year. By pruning the variable branch, we are left with only one possible mathematical cause.
Chronic high costs limit total profit, but they do not typically cause a sudden triple-digit percentage increase in losses. This leaves us with fixed costs. These are the expenses incurred regardless of sales: real estate fit-outs, corporate overhead, and capital depreciation. The primary driver for these costs was the decision to push out of major coastal metros and into Tier 2 Indian cities. To understand the deficit, we have to look at unit economics, evaluating profitability at the individual store level. A flagship metro store like this Mumbai location benefits from massive, concentrated daily footfall. These locations can generate 8 times the daily sales of a smaller competitor, allowing them to quickly absorb the high fixed costs of the initial fit-out. Tier 2 market entries face a different reality. The initial capital expenditure remains high, but local footfall is significantly lower and takes longer to grow. This chart visualizes the maturity curve. The flat high line represents the fixed cost threshold of a new store, while the rising line tracks its revenue over a 24-month period. In a Tier 2 market, a new store often requires 18 to 24 months to generate enough regular footfall to break even on its fixed costs. Because India's per capita coffee consumption is relatively low, the company is forced to build premium infrastructure ahead of proven local demand. Opening dozens of these stores simultaneously front-loads massive fixed costs. The burden increases immediately while the revenue curves of those new locations lag behind. This confirms our hypothesis. The velocity of capital deployment is the sole driver of the widening loss. The primary issue is the sequence of capital expenditure. In a rapid physical expansion, the timing of investment must match the maturity of the market. Identifying the structural leak is the first step. The second is providing the blueprint to fix it. The primary recommendation is for Tata Starbucks to immediately reduce the capital expenditure intensity per new store opening. Tactically, this involves shifting away from full-scale cafes in Tier 2 cities. By using smaller store-in-store formats within existing retail spaces, they can drastically reduce real estate overhead. Second, introducing a lower price point tier can widen the addressable customer base. This accelerates the 18 to 24-month maturity curve by driving higher transaction volume early on. Finally, the rollout sequence must change. Further expansion into new Tier 2 cities should only occur once the previous cohort of stores has reached store-level profitability. This case highlights several universal principles. First, growing revenue and growing losses frequently coexist. Top-line health does not equal model viability. Second, international market entry requires rigorous local recalibration. Copying a global premium playbook without adjustment often leads to structural loss. Third, the primary threat in an expansion case is often the pace of fixed-cost deployment outrunning the maturity of individual units. The MECE tree serves as the underlying architecture for turning corporate chaos into a solvable equation.